Crazy breaking news for the Texans. A big move on the offensive side, but not the move you would expect. A big firing has been made, and we're going to break down what does this mean for the team moving forward and what direction are they going to go into. Welcome to Texans Digest, where we're breaking down the latest Texans news. If you would hit that subscribe button, stay up to date on all news that's Texans. Let's jump into it. Bobby Slowick has been let go, fired, and he was a big problem as to why the offense was as bad as it was this year. CJ Stroud, the sophomore slump, and I see a lot of fans that are not Texans fans that are just saying, oh, Slowick was there for 2 years. Stroud just had a down year. Why'd you let him go? But the Texans fans back me up when I say Slowick was a bad problem. We're going to really talk about all the offensive issues and what went wrong. I made a video a few weeks ago saying that Slowick has been so bad, and then the playoffs. But you have to, I'll bring up a quote right now from DeMeco Ryans where he said that he was not satisfied with the offense, and that might just be a shot at Bobby Slowick and what he hasn't been able to do effectively this season. Slowick has been very bad, to say the least, and it's just his inefficiency on first and second down, continuing to run the football, and DeMeco Ryans made a change, and he said, I'm going to have to fire a friend of mine, Bobby Slowick. They worked together in San Francisco, but it was the right move. You had to make just a statement and say, hey, we are going in a new direction on offense. CJ Stroud, yes, he didn't play the greatest, but that was a product of what the offense set him up to fail. And yes, the offensive line was bad. Yes, there were plays that just didn't work, and you can very much argue that Stroud was the problem and not Slowick, but I really do believe that Stroud had good games at times, and you look at how the offense played, it was actually pretty good. The run game was there at times, and if you make the right move, you have, and this is, I'll compare it for a second. The Jacksonville Jaguars just signed Liam Cohen to be their new head coach. And that, don't underestimate that signing. That could be a powerhouse of a team next year. And when you have an offensive coordinator who honestly had a mid-offense after a phenomenal rookie season, it's almost like you have to make a move. Now, I was a little bit surprised, and I say that because normally teams don't fire offensive coordinators after 2 seasons with the team, especially after a okay middle-of-the-pack season, and you could blame it on the injuries for the Texans at wide receiver. But if you have a good quarterback, like Josh Allen on the Bills, you should have an offense that sets you up to succeed. A byproduct of your quarterback. Josh Allen, he had 127 yards passing in the divisional round, but he distributed the ball, did what he had to do, and Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, set him up to succeed. Stroud, with the bad offensive line, that has been a huge problem, and they don't have the Bills' offensive line. But the point I'm making here is with the right play caller in the helm, the Texans can succeed. Now, let's go to the potential candidates for a second, because there's 3 guys that Aaron Wilson is considering. It's Gerard Johnson, Texans internal candidates. Gerard Johnson, the current quarterback coach for the team, who is talking with the Jets. I think that would be a great sense to move him up. Bill Lazor and Ben McDaniels, an outstanding candidate who makes sense. Clint Kubiak. I don't know if you could bring in Kubiak. I feel like the Saints are kind of holding on to him, and I mean, maybe Kubiak wants to come coach Stroud. I think that would be crazy. A different move that might not make the most sense, but Chip Kelly has actually expressed the fact that he wanted to come back to the league in 2024 before he signed with the Buckeyes. So maybe you could see Stroud. I mean, they never actually. Chip Kelly was there the year after Stroud was drafted, so it wasn't like they had a chemistry or anything, but Chip Kelly's still a very great offensive mind, someone who was considered for the Jaguars a couple days ago in terms of the offensive coordinator job. So Chip Kelly's out there as well. The reason this was such a good firing is basically the fact that you look at this offensive stats. They were very poor for what the season was supposed to be. I really don't think there's a sophomore slump. As far as the quarterback position, you are not a fluke. You are not inconsistent. And everyone that I hear, Jaden Daniels is going to have a down year. I've done the research on second-year quarterbacks, and they don't have down years. Yes, if they have a historical rookie season, it's almost setting them up to fail. You're setting them up to go higher of the expectations that they set last year. But looking at second-year quarterbacks, they continue that same pace. Stroud barely threw for 20 touchdowns. He had double-digit interceptions. So that is not a good year, and it's not a good look on Stroud. Now, stats don't tell the whole story, but they can at least tell you what went wrong and what happened throughout the season, especially offensive stats for Slowick and the offense. Stroud, 20 touchdowns on the season, and regular season, 12 interceptions. Last year, 23-5, but 400 less pass yards. So, again, the stats can be misleading. But looking at the offensive stats on the screen right now, third down conversion, 17th, middle of the pack. Yards per play, 16th, absolute dead center. Points a game, 18th. Nothing just surprises you. Nothing stands out. This offense was supposed to be a top 5 offense in the league. Tell me I'm wrong. You have Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Joe Mixon, Dalton Schultz. You're supposed to be top of the ranks. The Buccaneers, they had such a better season, number 3. And you just want to see more out of the Texans. It's a little bit of a disappointing season, right? And that's the problem when you have Bobby Slowick, this conservative play caller who doesn't want to push the ball down the field. Instead, let's run it 30 times a game. And I've expressed it. I don't care if we run the ball 30 times a game. But there's a limit on how many times you can run it on one drive. Against the Chargers in the second half, when we were up big, they passed the ball one time, 11 straight runs. Like, you can't do that in this league. Quarterback is the most important position, I would argue, because that's what teams build around nowadays. Josh Allen, mobile quarterback. Jaden Daniels. There's so many teams that go right through a quarterback, and just the running heavy scheme reminds me of Bill O'Brien trying to get the run game going with David Johnson back in the day, and it never worked. You can't have a run heavy, smash mouth football and just be the Niners. Like, but that was Bobby Slowick's offense with Kyle Shanahan. It was run the ball, 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 and that can work, but not when you have an offense that gives up the second most sacks in the league. Like, it's not good. So the rushing offense was good. It was solid. Top 13 in rush yards, rushes a game. They ran a lot. The passing stats is where you let me down big time. Quarterback sack percentage, number 30. Not good. But, like, the numbers that I'm trying to make a point on is the fact that this offense was just bleh. It was middle of the pack. It was not anything surprising. It was like, okay, the Texans, their defense bailed them out for most of the season. And there was a couple games they let up 30 points to the Titans and the Colts early in the season. But they've figured it out towards the postseason and forced Justin Herbert to have the worst game of the season. But the point with the offense has to be better. And I love the fact that DeMeco Ryans buckled down and said, hey, we're not satisfied with the offense. Just getting to the divisional round, that cannot happen. And I love it. From a second-year head coach, DeMeco wants to win. And I don't know who you go get for an offensive coordinator that can elevate the game as much as you want to. But again, for what we expected the Texans offense to be with the amount of weapons that they had, and yes, there were injuries, but you still expect them to come out and have absolute firepower. Stroud performed because of lack of the run game last year. We didn't have a run game. You had Damian Pierce, who had 2.5 yards a carry because you wanted to run it 15 times a game when he couldn't run. He couldn't get through the tackles. You couldn't create holes for him. You couldn't block. So it's the same problem this year with the offensive line where you have to kind of invest in offensive line. And I'm expecting the Texans to make big moves after firing Slowick. The big problem is the fact that we don't have any cap space. The Texans have to move on for multiple players if they want to go out and get a T. Higgins or George Pickens or Garrett Wilson. And I'm hearing a rumor that Mekabuka could be in the conversation. You still have to trade up to get a Buka. So there's just so many different things you can do. And the first order of business is firing Bobby Slowick. It's the perfect thing to set up a new offense for next year. And I start to wonder if maybe CJ Stroud played a factor in this firing. He didn't really back him up. He didn't really support him. He wasn't like, yeah, Bobby, we had a bad game. He didn't say anything about Slowick. Last year against the Browns, he at least expressed the fact, hey, we had our best game on the field. But this year he's like shaking his head at the offensive coordinator, not actually calling anyone out like other past offenses you see with their feuding with the offensive coordinator and quarterback. But Stroud, you could see he's frustrated, especially getting sacked 8 times versus the Chiefs. And you can't just rely on only Nico Collins. Mechie has to step up. Stover, who got hurt, but he needs to be the new tight end. I think you move on from Schultz. There's so many things that you can do, and it all starts with firing Bobby Slowick. Now you got to go get a weapon. You need a wide receiver to compare, to kind of go with Nico Collins. And I've heard Stephon Diggs is probably going to come back just because he's a veteran and his mindset is great. But you have to be able to find money first. And that's why I made the video on saying that Laremy Tunsil might leave, because you cannot have no money to just bring back the same guys you did last year and expect to have the same offense, because that doesn't work, right? Stephon Diggs, 32, coming off a torn ACL. Tank Dell, 2 torn ligament, a messed up knee. It's a lot of injuries. He might not be back till late next year, and who knows if he'll be the same player. And Dalton Schultz on a big contract. The real 2 only threats that we have on offense is Nico Collins and Joe Mixon. Yes, Diggs can come back. Who knows if he'll be the same player? And this is why all the trade rumors are coming out about the Texans potentially getting George Pickens or Garrett Wilson, maybe DK Metcalf, or a wide receiver. Even if you draft a wide, I don't know what you do. Maybe you trade Laremy Tunsil and get another first-round pick. But there are so many instances you can do as a general manager. And Nick Caserio, I am excited to see what he can do for the season. As far as the candidates, we already mentioned it, but Chip Kelly would be a good one. DeMeco, a good friend of Bobby Slowick. It's definitely interesting to see, and this is why I was surprised, because I didn't think they would actually have the gumption to stand behind a decision to get rid of a guy after only 2 seasons, but it's a lot to take in. So Bobby Slowick is out as the offensive coordinator for the Texans. You're going to have to go hire somebody else. Could be Gerard Johnson, the current quarterback coach. Chip Kelly's out there. Gary Kubiak. Clint Kubiak. I don't know why I said Gary Kubiak. Clint Kubiak. There's a lot to do for the Texans, but first, got to rebuild. Got to re-identify yourselves on offense. What does this offense want to be with CJ Stroud? Probably a pass-first team. Nico Collins, pair him with a receiver. Get to work, Nick Caserio. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We got some trade videos coming out soon. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you in the next video.